up, everybody? This is Damron with Trash Ass Gamers, bringing you one of our last three veteran dungeon guides on hard mode for Elder Scrolls Online. This is for Fang Lair, which is part of the Dragon Bones DLC. So if you haven't seen any of these videos before, I will keep these as complete playthroughs so you know where I am and how I got there. We'll fast forward through most of the ads, and we're basically going to be focusing on the mechanics of the bosses in the dungeon to help you guys out if you're having any difficulty. And then obviously we'll be doing the final boss, Thurvoken, and Orynn the Black on hard mode difficulty. So this is a pretty awesome dungeon. I really enjoy the layout of it. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Basically, the entire cave system is in the ruins of a Dwemer society that can't be explored due to the presence of the Black Marrow Necromancers, who share the same practice of Orynn the Black, which we obviously are not fond of. So we're rolling up on our first, boss area. This isn't really a boss. This is more of a kind of small arena in the dungeon where you're going to fight a few waves of enemies. So there's not really much to talk about here. It's just going to be several waves of Bone Colossi, some Wraiths, as well as some Skeletal Ravagers. Now the Bone Colossus do a pretty large AoE that if you're DPS, you definitely want to stand outside of that because that can do quite a bit of damage. So just be aware of that. Also, their heavy attack really needs to be aggroed by the tank, as that can certainly one-shot you if you're a DPS or a healer character. So moving on. Interestingly, Orynn the Black used this isolated cave system as the hub for his practices, and he found the remains of Thurvoken, which is the dragon that you fight in the inn, and is obviously pretty dangerous. And Orynn the Black found this as an opportunity to harness his powers and create his one great gift to the world, being a fiery death by the ancient god Thurvokun himself. Unfortunately for him, when we show up, the ritual is just being completed, and we can kill the newly reborn Thurvoken before he actually grows and regains his power. Another interesting thing about Orynn the Black is that he's a black necromancer that idolizes Mannimarco, which is the god of worms and father to all necromancy. So his mannerisms actually reflect that, especially when he sarcastically taunts you during the boss fight, just like Mannimarco taunted you when you found him lying on the table, bound by Molag Bal. And the Black Marrow Necromancers all share his practice. So a little bit of interesting lore about this dungeon. A really great dungeon. MasterJL being our trash ass gamer who brings us the lore, so thank you to him. And let's get moving on to the first real boss of the dungeon, the Cadaverous Menagerie. And the Cadaverous Menagerie is something that gives a lot of people the most difficult time in this dungeon, especially when you're going for your no death runs. This can be a difficult fight. So there's three main things you need to know. You got the cinch, you have the gore, and the bear. Now the bear is going to end the fight when he dies, so he's actually the main boss. And then also these dire wolves spawn in, and they will just continuously spawn in during the fight. You see the three wolves coming up, and when they get close to you, they'll generate an AoE that will explode and do a lot of damage to you. When you start the fight, you want to focus all of your attention on the Cadaverous Cinch, because after a few minutes, or about a minute or so, he will do a pounce attack that, if not interrupted, will kill a player very, very, very fast. But if you focus your attention on him early, you should be able to put him in a stunned position before he can actually pounce for the first time at all. And keep in mind, the gore and the cinch are not killable. You can just stun them, and you'll probably have to stun them a few times. We actually get through the entire fight in one phase, but I'll talk about what you need to do if you cannot do that. Now the gore, he is a ranged attack, so we like to stack all the bosses on the gore. Don't really focus on the gore, but your AoEs will eventually stun him over time. And the gore will spawn in these blue fungus throughout the fight that, if you get close to the blue fungus, it'll generate an AoE that can hurt you as well. So we like to kind of just, kite the wolves. You don't need to sprint, just walk around in circles, and if you see their AoE ready to explode, just kind of keep moving and that generally won't kill you. Now, if you don't have the DPS to kill the Cadaverous Bear prior to the cinch respawning, so to speak, when he comes back, he will instantly do a pounce attack. And when he comes back, your main focus needs to be able to interrupt the person that he pounced and then take him back down. And you should be able to take down the bear after that. If the cinch cut does come back up, you want to prioritize him and take him down immediately. Also, just a quick tidbit about the ads throughout this dungeon: the revivifiers. Anytime you come upon a group that has revivifiers, focus on taking them down first, because the revivifier can actually one-shot you. So the next boss coming up is Caluurion. Not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correct, honestly. But he's actually pretty easy. You can really easily skip his mechanics. He doesn't move at all. He will generate these lich crystals that come out of the ground, just like all the lich in the game. And they will generate an AoE that once they reach their maximum capacity, they'll explode for some damage. But they don't do that much damage. As long as you're not just taking damage from them continuously, you won't really need to worry about it. And he doesn't move, and if you have good DPS, you can actually skip the mechanic and just focus on him and don't even move. You can actually take him down, because what he will do is he will activate these relics around the arena, and depending on the relic he activates, a certain type of enemy will spawn and an effect will take place. But again, you don't have to focus on those if you have really good DPS. You can just keep attacking him, and then once you take him down, obviously the fight will end. However, if your DPS is a little bit slow when he spawns those relics, you can go over to the relic and kill it and come back to the boss. You can do that if you're having any difficulty. But again, if you have high DPS, that's really not going to be an issue. And then immediately after that is the next boss, who can be a little annoying. He's not a difficult boss, but a lot of no death runs can end right here, because Ulfnor has an attack with his little wraith friend that can instantly kill you if you're not paying attention. So he does have a pretty heavy two-handed attack, so the tank certainly needs to maintain aggro of that. If that two-handed attack hits any other player, you're in for a bad situation. But what you're going to see is Sebina, Cedus, the little wraith ghost here, every once in a while will chain an enemy and start pulling one of your players to her. And what will happen is, once that chain player gets to the wraith, Ulfnor will start walking to that player. And if Ulfnor reaches that player, they will instantly be killed. So what you have to do is, as soon as the Cedus starts chaining a player, you need to go and you need to take her down. And once you take her health all the way to 0, the player that's being chained will be freed. So here I am being dragged on the ground like a piece of meat. My buddies help me out. But Ulfnor will also do a flame AoE, which you're going to see here. He starts shooting these little AoEs all on the ground, and those can actually cause quite a bit of damage, especially if you're walking in the same direction as the flame. So just be sure you're going side to side, strafing, trying to avoid that damage. So let's pound forward.
You need to destroy the crystals like the skeleton. If I must.
I just want to take this moment here, as we're approaching the final boss of the game, to thank all of our supporters thus far. We've had a really great time making videos and starting our channel. This is new for us. We've really enjoyed it. After this, we only have Moonhunter Keep and March of Sacrifices to finish the hard mode dungeon guide and ESO, at which point we'll move to some of the trials and the arenas. But we've really had a great time, and we appreciate all your support. So if you enjoy these, feel free to like and subscribe as we continue to bring you more content. So we're rolling up on the final boss here, which is Thurvoken himself, the ancient dragon god in his bone form. So be sure you read your scroll to enter hard mode. And this is a pretty difficult fight. It's got a few phases, but what really makes hard mode much more difficult is the final phase. The first few phases aren't much different, other than the fact that when a crystal is activated, a Bone Colossus will immediately spawn. So the crystal phase, which is the first half of Thurvoken's health in the first portion of the fight, as you dwindle his health down, Orynn the Black will come down and activate a crystal, and we call this the crystal phase. And when he activates a crystal, immediately a bone colossus will spawn. And what you need to do is you need to take the crystal and the bone colossus down as fast as possible. Now, if the bone colossus does aggro you, he will do a heavy attack that has a pretty large wind up, and that is a one-shot kill. It does about 80,000 damage, so you really need to dodge roll that if the bone colossus is about to do the heavy attack on you. So in the crystal phase, that you're going to have to do that 4 times. You need to take out 4 crystals. And also you're seeing Thurvoken do a couple attacks. He does this conical attack with his tail that he will always aim at the DPS when the crystal gets activated, because if that hits you, it stuns you, and it's going to buy some time for the crystal to spawn enemies. Now, until you kill the crystal, enemies will continuously spawn, and if you're too slow, a second Bone Colossus will spawn. So you really want to just move to the crystal, stack the Bone Colossus on the crystal. Don't let him run away. So there you saw the heavy attack of the Bone Colossus, which I roll dodged. And stack your AoEs on top of the crystal and the Bone Colossus. And another thing you're seeing Thurvoken do is doing these very large poisonous AoEs. They start small and they grow to quite a large area of the arena. And I actually get killed by this later, which I'll show you. And then we'll talk about the beetles in just a second. So after you get about less than 50%, you're going to finish the crystal phase and go into the first ghost phase, which is the easy ghost phase. And in this phase, ghosts will be spawning on a wall, so you really need to keep your field of vision back and be paying attention to what wall they're coming on. And then you're going to have a friend come in and generate this golden wall. And basically you need to get behind that, because the ghosts that hit that golden wall will dissipate. And then you'll be safe. Now, if the ghosts touch you, you are instantly dead. It's if you get touched, you're done. There's no damage. It's just an instant kill. So you really need to get behind that golden wall. And the beetles, if you touch them, they are going to slow you down. And this makes it a very difficult fight for the tank. And we have an amazing tank in this fight, and he does a pretty awesome job later. You'll see it gets down to just him, and he holds it down. But the beetles will slow you, and basically they're going to generate a little AoE around your feet as the tank. And when that AoE reaches its maximum, you want to roll dodge back, so that they don't spawn right on top of you, because if they slow you, that can be pretty devastating. And then you're going to enter, once you take his health all the way down, you're going to enter this final phase. And one thing he's going to do, Thurvoken's going to go up on the wall here, and 4 golden circles are going to be laid around the map, and each player needs to get to a golden circle, and basically you will protect yourself from these poison balls that he shoots down from the wall. And if you don't get into a golden circle before your AoE reaches its maximum, that will automatically one-shot you. So it gets a little hectic here, actually, and what you see in this portion of the fight is those ghosts that are coming on the walls never stop coming. And I'm not really sure that was a BS kill. So if you saw that Bone Colossus, that was that heavy charge attack, which I'm going to show you here, the Clash of Bones, 80,000 damage. So that will kill you. Now, I did roll dodge, and for some reason it still hit me. Explain that one to me, I don't know. But anyway, Savage holds it down here, and this is something you really need to know. If you can hold it down as the tank, if you have a very good tank, a really good opportunity to res is when he goes up to shoot that ball of poison down, because you can go into your golden circle, get cleansed, which he does here, and you'll have a moment to res some of your teammates. And this was really honestly an epic survival by the tank. So you see here, he's got a moment, he's going to get cleansed, and he's got a moment to get a res in. So that's really the only opportunity you have to really get a res in during this fight. This is a very, very difficult fight. This was an ultimate save by our tank right here, as we're just all laying here like, oh, you got this, but have hope. And a final thing I want to point out about this phase is the ghosts. Okay, this is a big thing that makes hard mode much different than normal mode. Is that the ghosts that spawn and come down, across the board, they continuously come. As soon as they hit a wall, they're going to spawn on the new wall and they're going to come. So you really need to keep your field of vision back and keep an eye on the walls themselves and seeing where those ghosts are coming from, because the guy that made that golden wall is no longer doing that. He will not be coming in. There will actually be a physical gap in the ghost wall itself that you need to position yourself to so that the ghosts don't hit you, because again, if they hit you, that's going to be an instant kill. And then finally, as you're bringing his health down, every 10% he's going to spawn a Bone Colossus in, and you really need to take that Bone Colossus down as soon as possible, because again, that heavy attack, which you saw me get killed by, generally does a lot of damage, but you should be able to avoid it if you roll dodge. Again, I'm not exactly sure why I didn't, but that's something you need to be aware of. And that's really all the mechanics of the fight. And I know it's a lot, so feel free to rewind this portion of the fight and listen to all the mechanics I'm telling you about and I'm trying to show you as well. Again, you're going to see that large poison AoE that's on my feet right now. So if you do get rezzed, just stay down while you're in that poison. And I believe later in the fight, I get into a situation where I get feared while I'm in the poison, and that that's kind of bad luck. There's not much you're going to be able to do about that situation. But our tank really held it out there. We actually pulled this out. This was a miraculous comeback. I thought we were going to wipe, but it was a really good comeback. So you're going to see here that cleanse phase. This is the best opportunity to res if you're in this situation. So get back up and get in the fight. And don't DPS too fast, okay? If you DPS too fast in this phase, you're going to spawn multiple Bone Colossus, and that can be a bad thing. Once you get a Bone Colossus to spawn, focus your DPS on the Bone Colossus, take him down, get back on Thurvoken, do about 10%, take out the next Bone Colossus, go back to Thurvoken. The only time you really need to ignore the Bone Colossus is at the execute phase, the last 10 to 15% or so, at which point you can just execute Thurvoken and not really worry about the Bone Colossus. So again, you're seeing us all get cleansed there. I think our res is happening on our other DPS, so you do have some opportunity to come back in this fight if you take your time. You just need to know when to res. Don't try to res in any phase other than when you're getting cleansed by the gold circle. Get your cleanse and go get a res, because that's the most downtime you're going to have in the fight. Thurvoken also will do some fearing that can really be frustrating. And I will also say that Orynn the Black will come down here and launch these skulls I forgot to mention at players, and that needs to be interrupted. So, see, I got feared into the poison pool here. That was just bad luck. But Orynn the Black will also launch these skulls at everybody. He'll kind of spawn on a random point in the map, and you want to designate someone on your team um, as someone that can just interrupt that attack. So you really, you want a ranged interrupt that, because that can do a lot of damage. As I was res here with like no stamina, but we finished the fight. So I know that's a lot again. Feel free to rewind it, listen to all those mechanics again. It's definitely a difficult fight. One of the hardest fights I think in the game right now in the veteran dungeons, along with March of Sacrifices and Scale-Crawler Peaks. So let's check out the monster set, which is Thurvoken set. You're going to get additional health, and then when you take damage from a nearby enemy, you can basically create one of those pools of bile, that large green AoE that he does that causes disease damage every 1 second, as well as afflicts them with minor maim and minor defile for 4 seconds, so reducing their damage and the healing received. So pretty cool set. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.